Tomas from Swedish Radio. I think it's a great follow-up on like what we had already this morning, right? Also great broadcasters. So here, Tomas will talk again about challenges, opportunities that you face as a broadcaster when you venture into this area of voice.
Yeah,
the floor is yours.
Thanks so much. It's quite a sharp turn from SDG to broadcasting, but perhaps not. I will speak about opportunities and some challenges with voice when it comes to radio. First, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Tomas Granryd. I've been working for Swedish Radio for many, many years. I have a background as a host and as a producer, and the last like 7, 8 years I've been working with digital innovation, and my job is right now head of digital partnerships, so all kinds of partners that we work with, like Spotify or Google or Apple is something I manage. And I have 2 kind of areas that I'm specifically interested in, and that is the connected car and voice, or everything about voice. And I'm also sharing a group that is called the Vox Group, that is a European coalition of broadcasters that are working on voice. As you perhaps know, broadcasters in Europe are kind of together in one big organization called the EBU, mostly known for the Eurovision Song Contest. But they have a lot of different expert group as well, and one of those are the Vox Group. I will talk a bit more about that later on. So this will kind of be a presentation both on stuff that we're doing on Swedish Radio, but perhaps mainly about the status of voice when it comes to broadcasters in Europe. First, I would like to take a quick tour about radio. What is radio? How many listen to radio every day here? Some. If you don't, I will have a radio for dummies. What is radio? Radio is audio with some minor visual support, right? It's a super low threshold. Turning on radio is probably the technology that is the easiest thing you can do. It's a push of one button and it starts. The thing that we are really proud of when it comes to radio is that it works perfect without your hands and your eyes. You can do stuff, you can drive a car, you can run, you can do stuff and still be able to kind of enjoy the radio. And it consists, if you look at it, of independent building blocks that is kind of patched together. A producer has decided this should come then and that should come after that. So that's kind of radio when you look at it for dummies. So what is smart speakers for dummies? Well, if you look at the smart speaker, it's kind of audio with some minor visual support. It's a super low threshold, actually. It's probably the technology that has the lowest threshold of all. You just say one thing and you will immediately get it. It works actually great without your eyes and your hands. I mean, you can do dishes or cook food and you still can enjoy stuff, audio stuff from the smart speaker. And if you look at it, it consists of small independent building blocks that is patched together. We were super excited 2015. We understood that this is going to be magic. This is going to be the perfect marriage. So when we realized that this was coming, we really started to do stuff. The interesting thing was that the first smart speaker were launched in November 2014 in the States, and the first smart speaker in Europe were launched 2016. And in a way, we kind of had 2 years to import stuff, to look at numbers, what is happening in the States, to build teams, and actually just prepare for real when it was going to come. I don't think that that's had ever happened before, that we really had 2 years to prepare for something in Europe. And I know that practically all bigger European broadcasters really did this and really took the opportunity to kind of be a bit further on when they started to deploying these devices in Europe. So how is voice doing in Europe when it comes to smart speakers? It's actually doing quite good. you know this, but if you look at adults owning a smart speaker, UK is actually leading with about 37%. It's an adult owning a smart speaker or having access to a smart speaker in home. US is actually a bit down on the list, 35%, and they have plateaued a bit during COVID. Everybody thought that it would be skyrocketing, but they have plateaued a bit during this last year. Germany is doing great, 25%, and Sweden is doing okay, 16-17%. What are we using the smart speakers? Unfortunately, this is numbers from 2020, but I don't think that it has changed that much. I immediately, when I see this list like this, I look for radios. Okay, where is radio? And it's number 6, and it's quite okay. It is actually quite good. But if you look at the list even in more detail, you see that listening to radio is one thing, but when you think about radio, radio is not just radio, it's news and sports and radio and podcast. And if you combine those numbers, you'll actually have a quite much bigger number. So radio is doing great on smart speaker. It is a perfect match. A recent number that was published in a report that I will mention later on said that 60% of the smart speaker owners in UK use it to listen to radio. Perfect. If you look at how often people use smart speakers, Germany is actually leading this statistics. 66.8% are using the smart speaker every day. That is quite a massive adaptation for a new technology. In just a few years, you're actually using a new technology every day. So that's great. If you want to dive into the latest around development, I would say, and like a future look on where a country that is leading in a way see that the smart speaker and the audio will go in a couple of years, I would highly recommend this report that was launched in October. It's the UK government that has put together like a big digital report. If you search on these words on the internet, you will have it. I would say if you're interested in audio and smart speaker, this is kind of mandatory reading. But there is one thing that is super interesting with Europe and smart speakers, because I mean, when I show these numbers, it looks great, right? But there is one thing, and that is it's completely different stories. There's 2 completely different stories. It's like actually we have a European that is divided in the middle. Because if you kind of look at the media, what is written about smart speakers, you have on the left side articles from the UK or from Germany where it's like, this is the 11th best smart speaker, that sounds great, and the coronavirus actually did the listening so much skyrocketing on smart speakers, and this is the smart speaker, and so on. So that is like English and German and French news that kind of give you that story. And when you go to Sweden, it's like this. Smart speakers are still struggling with problems. 5 trends that came to a halt, and number 1 is smart speaker. It's like super negative. It's not, this is not happening. It is not taking off. And I mean, we had the same amount of time to prepare. We had almost the same time when it was introduced. So it's something interesting. Why is it such a big difference? If you look at the reach in Sweden, 17 or 16% own a smart speaker, 3% listen to audio every day. That means that they are not using it every day, right? That's the problem. A lot of smart speakers are standing collecting dust in Sweden. So why is that? I'm not sure, but I think there could be some explanation around this in 2 or 3 factors. The first factor is the competition or the lack of competition. If you look at Europe, you have like 3 different regions. One region is where there is no company that has entered the market on the native language, like Finland. You can buy Alexa there, but it can only be in English. And as you understand, if you want to listen to something, an audio that is on Finnish trying to get that to kickstart on Alexa using Finnish English, that will not be a super good user experience. And then you have regions like the Nordics and some regions in Europe where you have one company that has entered the market with your native language, Google. And this is the situation for Sweden. And then you of course have the big companies or the big countries where both Amazon and Google have entered the country with the native language. So this is probably one clue, or perhaps the biggest clue. The other one is, I think, time on market could be. I don't know if you know about this curve. It's a brilliant curve. It's the hype curve made by the consultant bureau Gartner. And it actually shows every technology, when it's introduced, goes through the same curve if it has a value. If it doesn't have a value, it doesn't go through the same curve. But let's pretend that the smart speaker has a value. And it goes through this curve where there is big rise in the beginning. There is like super early adopters. It becomes a mass media hype. This is the future. This is super, super cool. And then you kind of hit the peak. And then a bit more than just the super early adopters had adopted the technology. A lot of people are getting disappointed. It's not that cool technology. And the mass media starts negative press about the technology. And then it starts kind of falling. Startups are going bankrupt. There is no money, more negative press, and then you kind of hit the bottom, and then you start doing a more normal or okay growth that is more sound in a way. And if you plot in those regions in Europe, I would say that the countries that has no native languages, they are still here. So they have a bumpy ride ahead of them. The countries like Sweden or Norway, we are probably around here. We will have a rough year or two ahead. But there is actually some signs that people are starting to believe in the technology. And Germany and UK, you are here, I would say. You're starting to really realize this is the future. This is something that you can actually make money from. But slowly and gradually, this will grow. So you can also see the time on market is probably a factor why it hasn't took off in Sweden, but in Germany. So the result of this is the level of engagement from the broadcasters. So a direct result of this is, of course, how much do we spend as a broadcaster on this technology? And you have on the left side companies like ARD or BBC or RAI from Italy that have big teams. I mean, look at the beautiful work that BBC are doing. It's great, but it's because they have a great momentum as well. And they are a splendid company, of course. But that is definitely very, very visible when you look at it like this. And then you have companies like NRK in Norway and Wiley in Finland that has small or no teams. NRK started out with a team, but they kind of shut the team down like a year ago. And they are just trying to justify the cost of having a team or focusing on this area. And then you have Swedish Radio that is kind of in the middle. We actually have a team that do stuff. We don't have to justify the cost, but there is no momentum really. And this is perfect like this, right? So what do we need from a European level? I think that we need more languages, more regions. We need time, we need patience, and we need persistence. And this is super important, persistence to keep on innovating, because this is a long race, right? Yeah. I would like to speak about 3 opportunities, or it's actually challenges, but I said it's opportunities, but it's because it's much more positive. The first one is the importance of being tier 1. For us as a broadcaster, tier 1 position is the absolutely most crucial thing there is. Does everybody know here what tier 1 means? Okay, great. Tier 1 means like this. when you're an audience and you say, I want to listen to P1, that is a radio channel on Swedish radio. I say, hey G, play P1. What happens then? Well, you will get P1, but it will go through an aggregator, like TuneIn. Or if you have a podcast, it will go through Spotify and serve the audience with that content. Or Google Podcast. And this is really shitty for us. Because the audience actually don't need an aggregator. In a car environment, they need an aggregator called FM, where you have like all the channels are collected together. But in a voice device, in a voice environment, you don't need an aggregator. You know what you want, and you say it. Play P1. So we need a direct communication with the audience. For us, the aggregator are just in the way. And I don't know if you saw the first slide of BBC, because they actually said the same. Why is this important, the tier 1? Well, it's important because we need to have the editorial control. We need to understand that there is no commercial patched in our feed, or that they kind of do stuff with our editorial stuff. So we need that direct communication. We need as well a clear attribution. It's super bad that the smart speaker says playing P1 from TuneIn. That's quite bad branding, right? It should be saying playing P1 from Swedish radio. And of course, we will get better data when we are serving it directly to the audience. So tier 1 is our top priority throughout Europe for broadcasters. The second opportunity or challenge is that I think that we, countries that have not that great momentum, have to shift focus in order to kind of have the persistence to keep on innovating. And we are doing this at Swedish Radio right now. We are trying to shift focus from the smart speaker to kind of look at the voice navigation on a more holistic level. And we are looking at guidance on all devices. So this is Eva Toivonen. She has a beautiful voice. She has been our voice on Swedish Radio for like 15 years. And we had the opportunity to work together with her on my voice team for 3 years. She has done, I think she has read like 1,200 phrases and words that we can patch in when you're kind of welcoming a person on a smart speaker. And when you start P1 on our action, it gives like the context to the zero interface environment. So it could sound like this when you start P1.
Här är P1. Just nu sänds Ekot. Strax börjar USA-podden.
And then the Ekot starts playing. So that's how it sounds today. What we're trying to is going for the next version. A much deeper experience, a much more personalized experience on Google and on all devices actually. So it will be like this, and this is very much a proof of concept. She has just read 7 hours of text feeding the machine, so it's it's not even a beta, it's an alpha. It's not out, but I think it's kind of interesting to see where this could be. And we need to kind of computerize Eva and mix it with her real self in order to make this happen. So what does this mean? Well, it means that if you're listening to a show or a podcast on our action, and the podcast ends, and you will be served a new podcast, Eva can give you the context of that podcast. But of course, she cannot read in every show that we have and feed it to the machine. We have to computerize her so she kind of synthesized or reading the metadata from every show. And it could sound like this.
För Sveriges Radio.
Tack för att du lyssnat. Här kommer Selma Lagerlöf, kärlek, kvinnor och banbrytande konst från P3 Historia. Något vi tror du kommer gilla.
P3, Sveriges Radio.
As you can hear, it is computerized. It's not perfect at all. But it's interesting. You can actually, it feels like Eva, but you understand that it's a computerized Eva. Perhaps that is something that you could work with. And in the long run, perhaps you could start the day. So when you start your app on Swedish Radio, you can actually be served like a compressed version of everything that you need. Like, you know what time it is. We know what time it is. We know where you are, so we know the weather, we know the top news, and we know what you like, because we know what you have listened to before, so we can kind of recommend stuff. And it could sound like this.
God morgon. I Stockholm är det 4 grader och moln. Ljusner. Rekordmånga delar cell i fängelser och häkten. Vi tror att du skulle gilla senaste avsnittet av söndagsintervjun.
And then the söndagsintervjun start. And this is what we're trying to do here, is trying to shift the idea of just looking at the smart speaker and look at the complete environment and using voice as a navigation. So these are 2 opportunities or challenges, and the third one to end off here is too many voices. I think that when we are trying to reach out to the FANGs, to Google or to Amazon, we quickly realize that they're very interested in talking to us, but we are a lot of different countries, and we have a lot of different, like, it's too handful, and we actually don't have that much strength when Sweden, with 10 million people, knock on Google door and say, you have to do like this. But we realize that if we kind of go together on European scale from broadcasters, we will actually have quite a strong amount of people and amount of listeners in our portfolio. So that's why we started the Vox group on the European level. It started 2017, 2018. It's 30 member states with all the relevant companies in Europe. And we all agree on a couple of things. We agree on, we share everything. We share best practices, we share code, we share ideas, we work together when that is needed. We don't compete at all, because there is no competition. That's super interesting with this area as well, because every language is a barrier itself. So it's not, there is no competition from Norway or from UK in that sense. We organize a lot of hackathons, then we compete, of course. Why is this important? Well, we think that voice will change the media landscape at its core. It won't happen overnight, but it will happen slowly. This is a long race, really. We think that public service media should lead, not follow. Because we have reliable funding, all public service media. So we could take, and we should take risks. We don't have to maximize audience for every stuff that we're doing. So we should lead, not follow. And we should be one voice, strength in numbers, one voice towards the giant. And the last but not least, we should collaborate. Technology is so young and so confusing many times, so the smartest thing we can do is to share and collectively get smarter. So that's why we really want to collaborate, and that's why we want to collaborate with you. So I'm reaching out here. If you want to collaborate, please reach out to me. I can put you in contact with a relevant broadcaster in Europe if you want.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Thomas. I think for you, because you were very good on time, we still have time also for 1 or 2 questions now, even before the discussion rounds. I thought it was a very interesting also insights on like where you see the market in the different countries. I think that was quite interesting. Any questions from the audience?
I'm sorry, not really a question. I just want to thank you for a really inspirational talk. Thank you.
Thanks.
Also good. Maybe we should do that much more in the course of the days. I'm trying to do it, but I think it's nice to come also from the audience. Any other questions, remarks?
Please come and sit with me at my table.
Perfect. Yeah, we will have the roundtable discussions afterwards. So, as I said, thank you very much. I think what was quite interesting is, you showed the state of the smart speaker market.